This is Greg Kelly. Donate now to Toys for Tots, which works year-round. Go to toysfortots.org. Toys for Tots supports children in need throughout the year with programs like the Toys for Tots Literacy Program. Established in 2008, it has provided over 63 million books to disadvantaged children. The Toys for Tots Literacy Program is committed to providing disadvantaged children with direct access to books and educational resources that enhance their ability to read and communicate effectively. Go to toysfortots.org.
Listen, all you New Yorkers. Excuse me. Taxi. Okay, man, we're looking around.
This is the 77 WABC minicast.
All right, welcome back to Full Court Press with Sean Spicer on WABC. A lot in the news this week on politics, a lot in the news. But one of the things that went underreported, if you will, is the big announcement that Bobby Kennedy made that for those of us in sort of the MAHA movement are very interested in. This big announcement that sort of went unreported on Bobby's appearance on Joe Rogan was his discussion about peptides. What is a peptide? Why does that matter to us? What's next? To break this down further, I want to bring in Dr. Jessica Duncan. She's the medical director at IBM Health. Dr. Jessica, good to see you.
Good to be here.
All right. This I think, like I said, went kind of underreported when Bobby made this mention on the Rogan podcast, but a lot of people in the MAHA movement got excited. So let's just start with, can you explain to people like what is a peptide first and foremost?
Yes, absolutely. I think it's interesting because when it came out on Friday, I think a lot of mainstream media kind of missed it, and we've been seeing more reports on it this week. And really, what are peptides? Really think about peptides sort of like a smaller protein. So peptides are, made up of building blocks called amino acids, just like proteins, but they're smaller. And what a lot of people don't know is peptides are really found throughout the body. A lot of our hormones are peptides, like insulin and growth hormone. The one that we hear when we talk about peptides a lot is GLP-1. So the GLP-1 hormone in the body is actually a peptide as well. And so when these peptides bind to their receptor or their target in the body, then they create a certain effect in the body. And in its simplest sense, that's really what peptides are.
So why, I guess what I didn't understand is, this sounds really simplistic. Like, why is this like a big announcement? Like, were they restricted in the past? Are they dangerous? Like, why? Like GLP-1s, Ozempic, Wegovy, Mounjaro, Zepbound, those are all like drugs that I have to go to CVS and get a doctor to sign off like you. But like, what is the peptide? Like, is that, you mentioned it's a naturally occurring thing. Like, why is this a newfound thing, or what does it mean? If I'm sitting there as a patient, do I need a doctor or what?
Yeah. So, right. So when we think about peptide therapy in the way that Secretary Kennedy is talking about it, we're really talking about synthetically made peptides that mimic a peptide in the body. So what's exciting about what Secretary Kennedy said, and really when he came on as a secretary at the beginning of the administration, he has always expressed an interest and a positivity about peptides. So what happened was in 2023, there were a number of peptides that were used in clinical practice, but due to concerns with not having sufficient data on the effectiveness of the peptides, they were actually moved over onto the Category 2 list, which restricted our ability to manufacture and offer these to patients. When Secretary Kennedy came on board, he did express that he's had personal experience with peptides, has had a lot of clinical benefits, and that he had a desire to really look at the science again and see if we couldn't get them moved off of the Category 2 list to make them available. So what he told Joe Rogan on Friday is that actively right now, the FDA is reviewing the science, and he anticipates that within a few weeks' time, 14 of the 19 restricted peptides will likely be moving off the Category 2 list, which would allow pharmacies and manufacturers to begin making them again.
So when you say making them again, it sounds like people had been introduced to them and then they got pulled back?
Exactly. So he does mention this in the podcast as well. So people were introduced to them and then they got pulled back. But what happened was people were experiencing the positive benefits of them. And so when they got kind of, pulled back, like you said, that didn't mean people wanted to stop using them. So what it's created is sort of this this desire to get them by any means necessary. And he mentioned in his comments that they were kind of finding them from unethical or unsafe sources, a different alternative market, so to speak. So people didn't want to stop using them necessarily. So it really created this sort of new or alternative market, so to speak, where people were obtaining them without physician guidance, sort of from unknown suppliers. And that's actually quite dangerous.
See, that's what I wanted you to touch on, because you are an obesity doctor. You lead this whole effort at IDEEM Health. But like for people who are like, I'll be honest with you, and you know, I've known you a while. I texted you the night. I'm on Instagram, and I see this fitness bro. I mean, it's fun. I mean, I this is the sad state of. I'm sure you love this as a doctor when people like me are like, I saw on Instagram, and I did. I saw this fitness guy, and he's talking about all of these peptides, and there's one that I'll butcher the name of called Peptide, right? Or something like that. But this is the hot one. Why is that like why is suddenly everyone in the fitness space talking about these?
Yeah. So, you know, I think the big thing is that what happened when we as doctors couldn't prescribe and access these drugs is that it kind of, you know, like I said, people were using these already in the fitness space. You know,
wait, when you say using them, doctor, I don't understand that. Like, how would I, if I looked at this, so I want this drug. I think I saw I mean, I'm just playing devil's advocate here. I'm on Instagram. I see this fitness bro. Like, when you're saying using them, how would I have gotten it?
Wouldn't be getting them through a doctor like me. You'd be getting them through some sort of alternative market where it's very unknown of exactly what you're getting, the quality of the ingredients that you're getting. Just like Secretary Kennedy said, you know, it was these unethical suppliers, kind of the words he used to refer. I don't know. I really haven't looked to try to find them.
But I mean, the point is that if you're getting them, or if somebody's telling you they can get them, this is not what you want to be putting in your body right now.
Exactly. And really, what's so interesting about peptides in general is the risk and benefit discussion is very nuanced and very specific to an individual person. So without having physician guidance or provider guidance, I think it's really difficult to make those decisions on your own. The dosing is very nuanced. How it works with the other medications you're taking, your risk factors, is very nuanced. So I think, you know, having that in a guided way is really essential. And there are doctors like me who have been staying on top of the available data, staying on top of the research trends, following what's going on in the fitness community, seeing how people are responding, even though these aren't things that we're prescribing. We're staying on top of it. We're well versed. We're here and ready so that when they do come off the Category 2 list, we're ready to help guide our patients who could benefit from them.
Yeah, and I think that's the takeaway. I mean, there's a lot of us, myself included, that have tried to, you know, go on this wellness journey. I've, you know, bounced a million things off of you because I'm like, I see stuff. And I think for a lot of people that they're following people who are, you know, talking about wellness and health on Instagram or some other social media platform. This is going to sound like the silliest question ever, but there's a story in GQ that you're quoted in about this whole issue, right? And I'm pulling it up to talk to you because I wanted to refer to it. When I'm looking at this story that quotes Jessica Duncan, doctor, you know, a board certified obesity physician and chief medical officer, I think literally to the right of that, literally right now, there is an ad for collagen peptides that quote mix right in. I've used these in smoothies in the morning. Again, what's the difference? Why can I mix some collagen peptides in my smoothie in the morning? Maybe I shouldn't. And versus like this other one that we just talked about. Like, again, is it like a broad topic when you say peptides? There are different categories.
So some of them are used as drugs and some of them are used as kind of like food and supplements. So they're regulated in a very different way. So what you might see advertised as collagen peptides as a supplement, like a powder that you would mix with foods. When we're talking about peptides, like one that's called GHKCU, that's a copper peptide complex. That is something that is on the Category 2 list and may potentially be moved off. And that's quite different because that's really regulated as a drug that's taken, you know, either topically through an injection. And it really depends on the bioavailability or how the body metabolizes the medication. And I realize I didn't answer your question about the retatrutide. That one is a little bit bit different. So retatrutide is actually a triple agonist. It has a GLP-1 effect, but it also has two other receptors it hits. And that's actually a medication that is in clinical trials and will be FDA approved hopefully before the end of this year. But that is a medication that's used for obesity that is going through the research drug and development pipeline. Anyone who's receiving or taking that medication right now is not getting it from a doctor or a prescriber. It's frankly not available to us. Just like, semaglutide, tirzepatide had to go through the clinical trials, retatrutide does as well. So that's frankly not available. We're hoping it's going to be available for patients in 2027, but that one's a little bit different than the ones that Secretary Kennedy is talking about on the Category 2 list.
So just sticking on this retatrutide thing, because that's where a lot of buzz is for people. Is this the next big thing? Is this something that you guys at IVM Health are already saying, we see where the market is and we're going to want? And who would that be for? I mean, if you think about it, you mentioned tirzepatide and there's semaglutide. Like, what are the differences? If you're out there saying, which one's for me, how do you know? Or is that what you do as a doctor to decide based on the patient?
Absolutely. So retatrutide, like I said, it has that additional receptor. So when you think about, semaglutide targets one receptor, tirzepatide targets two. Tirzepatide had a little bit higher of a weight loss result than semaglutide by adding that other receptor. Now, when we talk about retatrutide, we're adding a third one that works on the glucagon receptor in the body. And clinical trials are showing even more weight loss than what we had with tirzepatide. So this is definitely going to be the next big thing. And I think what's even more interesting about it is there's something about that extra receptor, that specific glucagon receptor, that's shown additional benefit for fat metabolism, particularly in the liver. But what you see about in that fitness community, those who are using it for better or worse right now are reporting changes in their body composition. And I think a lot of it is because of that third receptor benefit. So for me, obviously, you always have to talk to with your patient and say, well, what are your goals? How much weight do you have to lose? And then make a decision on which medication, those who are seeking medical therapy for obesity, which medication is best for you. But I absolutely believe that retatrutide is the next big thing. I think there's been talk in the medical community that for patients who previously had a higher BMI and might have been faced with the option of, bariatric surgery, this is going to essentially kind of rival that for patients that has more weight to lose just because of the outstanding results that we're seeing in clinical trials.
This one's being produced by Eli Lilly. Now, Is this going to face the same? I mean, like we've seen with President Trump and Trump RX or whatever. I mean, the cost is for many people prohibitive, right? It's like $1,000 or $1,500 a pop. Are we going to do you foresee the next version, whether that's compounding or something else, where suddenly we're talking about, okay, how do we take this retatrutide and bring it down to an affordable means for so many people? Like, is that the next wave, or is that sort of maybe, I know I'm asking a doctor to maybe talk about the pharma side, but where do you see that going?
Cost is an important conversation because, listen, I want my patients to be able to have access to the right drug for them. There's nothing that's more frustrating for me when we have a conversation and we decide, well, this is your best option. And then they kind of get back to me and say, I can't afford that medication. Now we have to go back to the drawing board. We have to figure out what's going to be the next best option for them. Nobody wants to offer their patients the next best option. It's great to have it, but we always have to talk about cost as it pertains to accessibility. So I think that's a topic that absolutely has to come up. I think as we get a little bit closer and through the phase 3 clinical trials, I think that conversation will start to emerge. It sounds like it's been a hot topic and something that the administration does actively work on with the pharmaceutical companies, but I absolutely think that's a conversation we need to be having as retatrutide is coming through the FDA pipeline.
Getting back to this peptide thing, is this something that, like, I mean, as I said, it's very hot among I keep colloquially referring to them as the fitness bros, but I'm sure there's fitness girls as well. But is this something that's just for people who need to lose weight or have an obesity issue, or is it like there is a peptide for wellness, of improving certain aspects of your health that may not, or fitness that may not be specific to weight loss?
That's a great question. So the interesting thing about peptides is they are very broad. Because of the way that they're built with these little chains of amino acid, they can kind of plug into different receptors and have different effects. So if you think about them, there are peptides that are, that have all kinds of like wellness targets. I really think of them as like, what is your wellness target? What are you looking to do? So one of the peptides that we see a lot, fitness bros and, sort of on social media is BPC 157. So for example, that peptide is really known for really, potential anti-inflammatory benefits and potential help with injury. But then there's other things like I mentioned which was the copper peptide complex with GHKCU, which is more sort of relevant to collagen production and sort of external signs of aging. So that's a vastly different, function for each one. So I think if you look at the list of peptides, the things that they could be used for are really vast. There are some that are more focused on body composition. So I think that depending on what your wellness goal is, you could almost argue, peptides could potentially be for everyone, depending on what your goal is. They're just so broad and vast what they can do and how many there are.
Okay, so if you're hearing this conversation between me and Dr. Jessica Duncan, the medical director of IVEAM, as the discussion of peptides moves forward, last thing I want to just ask you is there like a line between ones that you should be asking your doctor about and ones that you could take on your own without necessarily medical oversight?
I think anytime you're putting something new in your body for health or wellness, it should be a conversation that you're having with your doctor. What I would say is find somebody who is well-versed in this, who has an understanding of how they work, who knows what the research looks like, and who can really dive in with you and look at your health history and go through the risks and benefits and figure out what's beneficial for you. This is not something that you want to be doing on your own. The cycling, the stacking, the dosing are all very nuanced. This is something that it's really going to benefit you to have provider guidance when you're making these decisions about how to use them, how long to use them, and what to use them for.
Okay. Dr. Jessica Duncan, medical director at IVEAM Health and board certified obesity specialist. Thanks for being with us on this Sunday. I really appreciate it. Guys, thanks for joining us for this edition of Full Court Press and WABC. Look forward to being with you next Sunday. You can always follow me at Sean Spicer on Twitter and tune in every day on my YouTube channel for my live 8:30 show, The Huddle, or every night at 6 p.m. for the Sean Spicer Show. We'll see you back here next Sunday.
Listen to this podcast now on the Red Apple Podcast Network. The Leadership Thread with Dr. Peggy Polonis.
I'm Dr. Peggy Polonis. Join me on each episode where I unravel the story that shaped leaders, tracing the thread that led them where they are today. Because leadership isn't born in adulthood. And thank you once again for joining us on the Leadership Thread, education, ethics, and sustainability.
Download all of Red Apple Media's podcasts right now through your favorite podcast platform.